Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. I'm Kirsty and this is Stuck in the Mud. Please remember to like and subscribe if this kind of content is really helping you through your journey with OCD and anxiety and you would like me to continue making these types of videos. In today's video I'm talking about a very personal experience of mine and something I haven't shared with you guys yet because I've been very open and honest about my journey with OCD and anxiety and how it has affected me to the varying degrees it has over a span of 40 years. And I've talked a lot about my experience after having my third child because I've got 5 children with my husband. And after my third child, I had a really horrible time with POCD and just thinking I could cause harm to my baby. She was around 6 months old at the time, and it was a really scary and isolating time, which then led to me spending some time away from my family because I just wasn't functioning. I was just emotionally, I was all over the place. My OCD was just at an all-time high. I even felt suicidal at times, and it was a really terrifying place to be. So I won't go into too many details because I've mentioned a lot of this in other videos, but I started a new medication, which was clomipramine, which was life-saving for me because it actually helped me to get my life back on track, to do the therapy, to get better. And things really did start to improve once I started on that new medication. It took time, don't get me wrong, it's not a quick process. And I had to do a lot of work to, do all the therapy and practice the tools that actually help get OCD better and get me functioning again. But I did it all and I did really improve. I was back with my family, just doing all the things I should be enjoying and enjoying a new baby in the family. And that's what it's all about. These experiences do shape our lives and they impact us so much, but we can learn a lot from them. And I did learn a great deal from that experience, but I was also very nervous about the fact that it could come back. And this is what I really want to touch on in this video today, is that fear we have of going through that experience again. I was terrified that I could get back to that place again because it was just devastating. It really was. I was in a really rock bottom place where I just was unable to live normally. I was unable to function. And, I didn't want to be back there. So I think there was a part of me that was very much in high alert. I was always aware that the next trigger could be maybe send me down that path again. Even though I was medicated then, but I was terrified, that this was something that's going to happen again. And I think that goes for many of us with OCD and anxiety, especially when you've been at a rock bottom place with it. You're always on guard. You're always thinking, well, it's happened to me now, it's happened to me then. It could happen again further down the line. But looking back now and, we do have the benefit of hindsight, but I really think I should have had a different perspective on it. I did have the tools that I know help, but it's easy I suppose, to get complacent with life, especially when you get back on track and we're not using those tools as much as we should be. And I think that's where I'm different now. I do feel more healed in that respect, that I know when I get triggered. And these can happen anytime. And I've had it recently where something has maybe triggered me and I have to remember the work. Because I feel like when you get too complacent and you're feeling, better, you stop, doing the work. You don't do it as effectively, and you might find yourself just going down that OCD rabbit hole where we're trying to problem solve and overanalyze and overthink everything, try and pull everything apart, come to some kind of conclusion, and we're getting involved on some kind of level and we may not even be aware of it. And I do feel for some time after my third child that I was in that place where I was on high alert. I was kind of thinking, well, I wouldn't want to be back there again. And then we fast track, we go forward 5 years, and I was very, very well over that time. I feel like although the OCD was kind of present on a lower scale, it was always there, but I was much better than I had been in a long time, and I really credit the clomipramine and the work with my therapist. But then what happened, I was approaching age 40 and we decided to go for another child because I felt like my time was running out, that I could actually, have a pregnancy again. And I felt like, if I'm going to do it, it's now or never. There was a 5-year gap there from my 3 eldest children, my 3 daughters, and there was 5 years, and then I decided to go for another pregnancy. And fortunately, and I'm very lucky in this respect, I've always fallen pregnant quite easily. But I did wonder, because of my age, if that would be a longer process now, or if it would happen at all. So when I actually went, although it was all planned, I can't remember exactly how long it took, but I fell pregnant quite easily again. And then all of a sudden, I felt a nervousness towards the fact that I'd had 3 previous children who were all girls. And it got me quite obsessed about it, because I'm one of 3 girls. I have 2 older sisters, and, I'm always around girls. And I felt, I've done that, I've dealt with that, that's great. And then I became quite obsessed and panicky over the fact that, well, what if this child is a boy? What does that mean? And I became obsessed over the fact that I could get ill again with the POCD, because if it was a boy, then, that would mean that it was even more, because boys and girls are different. I felt like it would be more obvious, and I could get kind of hooked into the whole POCD theme again, which was terrifying, and it's so far apart from who I am. And I know that now. I've got so much more clarity over this situation. It seemed so irrational when I was going through it after my daughter, but when I was pregnant the 4th time, I was very on edge about the fact, would I cope with a boy? Would I have the same relationship? And you can see already, it became an obsession very quickly, that I was thinking that I couldn't have a good relationship with a son. I was obsessed about it. And it wasn't necessarily the fact that it was a boy, it's just the fact that I thought, well, that would mean potentially my POCD could come back. And, I had it with a girl though, so it doesn't make any sense. I'm looking back on this and it's so irrational. So I had the NIPT blood test, which would show me, I think it was like 99.8 or something, what gender the child would be, and also any genetic abnormalities that it might throw up as well. And because I was in an advanced age for pregnancy, I thought it was worth doing, and it also meant I could find out the gender more quickly. It was around 11, 12 weeks or something, so that's what I did. And I found out I was having a boy, and I plummeted into a real dark depression, a dark place where I was so anxious about it. It should have been a happy time. I've had 3 girls. I should be excited about having a little boy. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified, just because I thought my OCD would come back. And I was convinced. I was like, this is just, I was so angry as well. I was angry that, I was being put through this. I was like, how could I have a boy? How can I have a boy? And it sounds, I should be so happy and so thankful. And I look back with a lot of guilt and shame. And I know I'm being kind on myself, because I wasn't right in the head mentally. And if I could go back and change all of that, I would. But I look back on it as experience now. And I learned a great lesson from this, because everything that I was kind of predicting in the pregnancy, I was basically non-functioning. I spent weeks and weeks in bed because I was so depressed over the fact that I could be potentially in a situation where I couldn't bond with this child. I didn't bond at all in the pregnancy, and it was a really upsetting and scary time, because I am pregnant, and I just couldn't bond, because I thought, I'm not going to have a good relationship with a boy. I potentially could then get my POCD back because I felt like in some way that it'd be worse with a boy. I all these stories that I told myself and all the lies that OCD was really telling me, because that's what it was. It was OCD just taking over again, and I was becoming obsessed over it and thinking that this isn't something I could go through with. I even, was thinking, should I go through with this? And I would never have terminated the pregnancy. I just wouldn't have done that. And it's just something I couldn't done. And that's not, there was nothing wrong with the baby. And it's just something I just couldn't have done. And it was just, they may have let me do it for mental health reasons. I don't know. And I'm not going to even really talk about this much more, because it's something I look at my little boy now and it's just, how could I even have thought that at the time? But I was mentally unwell. I really was in that pregnancy. And perinatal OCD is a thing, hormones are all over the place, and I was in a really, really bad place. And that's why I really don't like talking about this. And it's really taken me till now to actually open up about this, because there is a lot of shame and guilt that go along with it. And I love my little boy so much. Now he's here and he's just the best thing ever. He's the best gift. I have a really close bond with him after the pregnancy, and I'll tell you a little bit what happened. I had a great support throughout that pregnancy in terms of like perinatal mental health at the hospital, and they were so supportive and really, were really good with me, because they knew I was in a really bad place. I wasn't sure how I was going to cope when the baby had to come, and I was very quiet about it all. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to discuss it. I was trying to hide my pregnancy. I was like wearing baggy jumpers. It was over a winter because he was a January baby, and I remember everywhere I went, I'd kind of hide it, and so people wouldn't ask me about it. I had quite a small bump with him as well, so it wasn't that noticeable. Like I say, when you're wearing jumpers and coats, big winter coats, people don't really see. So I really shied away from talking too much about it. And I feel quite bad about that now, because it was a joyous time, and it should have been, and I should have been on cloud nine. Everything was going well with the pregnancy. He was looking great. But then so far along in the pregnancy, I was told that he had I think they were saying he had quite a big head, and I was like thinking, how am I going to get through this delivery with him? I'm thinking that I'm not going to bond with him, and I don't really want to do all the changing of nappies with him because of the POCD. I was thinking that's going to trigger me. I was just all over the place. I was thinking, how am I going to cope with this pregnancy and birth? So the mental health at the hospital were really kind, and they gave me and my husband a private room. And in the end, I was so distraught in the pregnancy and so emotional, and they actually let me have an elective C-section. And this is something I'd not gone through before. I'd had 3 natural deliveries. So although when I've mentioned it to people afterwards, they're like, why did you have a C-section? And I'm like, well, it was for mental health purposes. And people don't really understand how bad it was for me, though. I was in a really dark, dismal place where I just couldn't see a way out. I thought, how am I going to bring up this baby that I have no connection to, who I don't want to bond with because I'm scared it's going to trigger my OCD and get me back to where I was 5 years previously. It was that bad. And people don't understand the depths it will take you to OCD and anxiety. And if people don't understand, and I don't really want to go into too much details when people ask me about that, but I just say, it was elective, and it's something that I had to do, and it was the best thing to do in that situation. Sometimes I look back at it now and wish maybe I hadn't gone down that road, but that's like I said, it's the benefit of hindsight is a wonderful thing. But here we are, and I went through that delivery. I was terrified, but I went in and did it. Terrified of what I was going to think of this new baby and how I was going to bond with him, thinking that he's going to trigger me and my OCD is going to come back tenfold and worse than it's ever been. And, after I had that C-section and he arrived, although I didn't feel an immediate bond with him, I was very intrigued, and my husband was very patient with me, and the nurses were very patient. I was adamant that he was going to feed him first. I wasn't going to have the first hold. I wanted him to do it. I didn't want to hold him straight away. And although that's really sad, and I look back and regret those decisions at the time, but it was the right thing to do in that moment for how I was and my mental state. I kind of witnessed my husband taking care of him. He did all the nappy changing, and I was recovering though. Let's not forget I'd had a major operation to have him, and just gently I remember my husband, holding him in our private room at the hospital, and I actually asked, could I hold him? I wanted to hold him, and it was really kind of just a gentle kind of introduction and just getting to know him and really just taking my time and not pushing myself to do anything I didn't feel comfortable with in that moment. So I didn't change any nappies at first. My husband was doing everything, and I remember just feeling a sense of relief when the pregnancy was over, because it's been such a horrible emotional roller coaster. It was just not enjoyable at all. I wasn't happy. I wasn't doing all the things I should have been doing. I wasn't excited about it in any way. But when he arrived, it was a sense of relief, and I didn't have that kind of. I didn't have that rush of love that I was, that people say you have with a baby. And I'd not necessarily had that with my girls either. There's been more of a slow bonding process there. But with my son, it did take a bit more time. And I will just say, I didn't mention earlier, I did go back on some medication in that pregnancy because I had been off it. So maybe that was having some effect. But then after I'd had him, I came home and I remember, watching my husband do the nappy changes and things, and I was becoming more able to walk around a bit better because of my C-section scar. And I remember just one day holding him and being just really in awe of him, because I'd not had a baby for a little newborn baby for 5 years, and I was just really just in awe of him. He was just perfect. And I remember just one day my husband was out of the room, and I decided to go and change his diaper and his nappy, and I just did it all on my own, and that was my decision to do that, and I was fine. I remember thinking, don't get involved with the thoughts. If you're going to get some kind of trigger from this, and you know what? It was fine. All of that emotional turmoil I was going through because of me trying to figure out if I was going to, I was thinking I'm not going to bond with this baby. It's going to be a horrible experience. And it was just peace. It was just the most lovely thing. We'd not had a new baby in the family for 5 years. He had 3 older sisters who adored him, and it was just wonderful. And we got him home, and I loved him to bits. And that just grew and grew and grew. And I was just so obsessed with him then in a good way. It wasn't, I loved him to bits. And I think I had a lot of time to make up for because of the horrible pregnancy I had mentally and emotionally with the OCD and anxiety, and it's grown and grown, that bond with my little boy. As much as I love all my children, I do have a special bond with him, and maybe that's because of the type of pregnancy I had with him. But I do feel like, and I do think this goes for everyone. We can really, especially when we have OCD and anxiety, we can dread things and think something's going to be the worst thing ever. And then when it actually happens, it's not. We can overthink things so much and overanalyze. We can be on that sense of high alert that something bad is going to happen, or, we're just so much in that zone, aren't we, with OCD and anxiety. And it really took this pregnancy, to really make me see that the OCD had a grip on me in that pregnancy, and it does happen, in pregnancy. Hormones are all over the place, and it's noted that OCD can get worse. But it changed my kind of perception on it, because I realise now that I shouldn't have been so focused on what could go wrong, and I should have used the tools that I had in place. I had those tools in place, but I didn't use them. And like I said, I give myself a lot of self-compassion. It was a pregnancy. There's hormones going on. It's a difficult time, but I do look now differently. And it happened to me again with my daughter, my last daughter. So, in pregnancy, I was very much mentally not in a great place. And pregnancy is not the easiest time. And like you say, we've all got the kind of toolbox, and sometimes, although we have that and we have it readily available to us, we don't use it. And that can be for a number of reasons. Like I said, in pregnancy, you're different. You've got hormones raging, and like I said, I've got to give myself some leeway for that. Maybe I didn't use the tools I could have done, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. And I have so much sympathy for anyone going through it, especially in pregnancy, which has really definitely on multiple occasions made my OCD come back just on another scale. And it didn't happen every time. Like I said, I've had 5 pregnancies, and it's only really after my 3rd daughter. It didn't happen when I was pregnant with her. It happened afterwards. My first child, there was a lot of anxiety and OCD. And then, like I say, in the pregnancy with my son, leading up to it, there was so much OCD and anxiety. And then with my daughter, it was really more towards the end of the pregnancy and then just afterwards. So it's happened at all different times, and sometimes it didn't. Like with my second daughter, it didn't happen at all. So I do feel like we have to give ourselves some leeway, just be aware that these things could crop up again. And maybe if I had, remembered that toolbox and not believed so much of what OCD was saying to me, the lies it was just spouting, because it just spouts lies all the time. And if I didn't just listen to it so intently and giving it the attention it wants, that's what OCD does. It thrives on attention. And if the more we give it, the bigger and stronger it got. And I feel like it just went too far. It just went too far and too big, and I couldn't contain it anymore. And it's very hard to pull back when you're in the thick of it with OCD and anxiety. It's very hard to pull back. But I've learned a lot, and I do feel like a lot of these experiences I've had when I've been at rock bottom, I've gained a lot of knowledge, and a lot of knowledge I can pass on to other people like you that might be watching this video, and realize that, we, as much as we fear the next OCD spike, we should really just remember that we have the tools to deal with it, and we can, and we don't need to give it so much attention, as difficult as it may be in the moment. But remembering that self-compassion, that it's a difficult thing to deal with. People don't understand how hard and debilitating OCD and anxiety is. Unless you've been through it, you just have no clue whatsoever of how much it can take, how much it can take over and have a grip on you that, you can't seem to shake. It just gets so big. So I've gained a lot of knowledge in the fact that I now, when I get triggered, as I still do now, I give myself that self-compassion and just realize that, it's okay. I can get back on track with this. I know what I need to do. I know I need to leave it alone. I need to let it be there. Just let it do its thing, and it will fade away on its own. And sometimes that's easier said than done. I know it is. And sometimes it's easier to do than others, because like I said, in pregnancy, I probably found it more difficult because of the hormone situation and the way that my body responded to pregnancy. And it was a very difficult time, but I'm so over the moon now with my 3 daughters, my 3 older daughters, my son, and my little baby daughter, who not so much a baby now, she's 3, but she's still my baby. And we have our family complete, and I adore my little boy. He is the one boy we have, and I look back on that, and like I said, with a lot of shame and regret, but at the same time, I do think, well, no, I was really going through it, remembering to be kind to myself and know that it was a difficult time. And, you know, I got through it, and it wasn't as bad as I had imagined all these scenarios in my head. It just didn't turn out like anything the way OCD was lying to me throughout that pregnancy, saying that I wouldn't bond with him, I wouldn't, you know, I was going to get POCD again. None of that happened. You know, none of that happened. I bonded with him in such a magical, wonderful way. It was just amazing. And I even came off the medication because I was doing so well. So it just goes to show you that it doesn't always work out as OCD likes to tell us. And it's just worth remembering that, and knowing that you can get through this, and you can be at the worst possible place and get better. Because I'm proof of that. You know, I've been there more than one time, and I do feel like I'm at a place now where I do view it very differently, and I have a different outlook on it. You know, I'm not like on guard waiting for the next thing. You know, things will pop up and it's okay. You know, I know it's going to pop up, but I've got to remember that I have the tools there. I know what to do. I know to leave them alone, and it will fade away as they do. And knowing that you can handle more than you think with OCD. OCD will make you limit your life and try and make you believe that you know, you can't do something, and, you know, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be the worst thing ever. But, you know, it isn't going to be like that. You know, it can be just the complete other way. And I'm not saying that bad things don't happen, because of course they do. But, you know, I, like with my daughter, I was constantly fearing that there's something wrong with her in pregnancy and it hadn't been picked up on, or, you know, something terrible was going to happen to me or her in the delivery. You know, it went on a different route with that pregnancy, and different kind of intrusions and different obsessive thoughts. But, and, you know, and things do happen. You know, we hear about it all the time, and I think that's why it's such a big thing now. And I do think it's on the rise, because we hear so much stories from around the world. You know, in the media, we're constantly bombarded with negative scenarios and things that happen, but we have to remember that OCD lies, and OCD will try and make you think of every scenario possible. But if we can just let them be there and let them play out, but just not get involved, you know, as little involvement as possible, and they will fade away. So I really hope this video is giving you a bit of insight. I've touched on this in the past, but I've never really given a full detailed description of what happened. So let me know in the comments if this video has helped you today. Maybe you've had a similar experience. Let me know. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys.